Hi there, welcome to day 2 of the Toxin series. Today is a little bit more complicated, so I might be going back and forth. I have less exposure to this topic, so more I focus on estrogen, I focus on progesterone, testosterone, those kind of sex hormones. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about how toxins can influence your blood sugar, insulin levels, and also your cortisol levels. And then we're going to talk a little bit about aging as well, because I just want to, aging and blood sugar levels really go hand in hand, and they've got a close correlation. So if you fix one, you can actually support the other. So the reason I wanted to talk about this actually is because, well, a couple of reasons, but the main reason was I've been getting clients a lot that are doing so much for their health and well-being. You know, they're on the right diet, cut out all the sugar, and they're doing everything so right, yet they're just not able to kind of get through this kind of insulin issue, the insulin being up and down, or the blood sugar being up and down, or the conditions associated to fluctuating insulin and fluctuating blood sugar, you know, like polycystic ovarian syndrome, obesity around the middle. And so I just felt like this needed to be explored a little bit further, and we need to understand the connection between our external environment and our hormones here, and what toxins are actually doing to our blood sugar and our whole endocrine system. So today I want to focus just on the blood sugar and insulin, and also cortisol. So insulin resistance is where your pancreas is making insulin, but your insulin receptors aren't responding. So you end up with an overflow of insulin and glucose in your body. Now, while I was writing notes for this Facebook Live, I actually had an aha moment myself, and this is quite a biggie, because this is something that I'd been struggling with for quite some time, and I kind of gone, whatever. But I have a healthy diet. I do everything I should be doing, but I still have problems with hyperinsulinemia. Now, hyperinsulinemia is high insulin in your blood. Now, high insulin in your blood can affect many different hormone systems in your body. So it can cause you to have elevated testosterone, it can cause you to have elevated estrogen, it can cause you to have elevated cortisol. So it can do all these crazy things. And you know, I've been working for quite a while on myself, and I just couldn't figure out why, when I was doing everything I should be doing, why my insulin levels were still spiking. And what's interesting, while I was getting notes for this Facebook Live, and I was doing research, one of the studies I came across when it comes to insulin levels is toxins, particularly heavy metals, and their relationship to elevated insulin and blood sugar levels. It's actually, the studies that I've been looking at show that there is a correlation between diabetes and exposure to these heavy metals. For me, this was the biggest aha moment, because I'll tell you why. One of the heavy metals is arsenic, one is cadmium, but one is nickel. What's interesting is when I did my hair mineral analysis, I had super high nickel in my hair mineral analysis. All my other heavy metals were fine, but I had super high nickel. What's interesting here, now this is what's interesting. When I was about 8 years old, I was tripped over and I smashed these front teeth. So 2 of my front teeth here have actually got porcelain filling in. The teeth are still alive and they're fine, but both of these have to be filled, and I have to get them refilled every so often when the filling sort of starts to fall out or it gets a little bit stained. But I've had them since I was 8 years old. And what's interesting is these porcelain fillings, they've been found to have nickel in. I couldn't understand. I was like, why do I have really high nickel levels? But now, after doing research for this Facebook Live, I suddenly had, don't you just love it when you have those aha moments? That this is the reason, this nickel is one of the reasons I haven't quite been able to get a handle on my insulin levels, which means which I'm always prone to having elevated testosterone levels. And also, I'm prone during my cycle to get some keratosis pilaris. Now, keratosis pilaris is some of the bumps here. I can be gluten-free, I can be dairy-free, I can have a vegan, whatever diet you put me on and how healthy I can be, never completely goes. But insulin levels can cause that to be worse throughout your cycle. So I'm just thinking, okay, for me it's nickel. So what I'm going to do is, because I haven't researched this enough, is I'm going to figure out exactly how I need to cleanse and detox this nickel from my body, and I'll keep you posted on that. But what I found out from studies is arsenic. Arsenic is definitely, you've got a higher risk of diabetes. Cadmium, arsenic and nickel, definitely you're more at risk of being insulin resistant. And BPA, get this, BPA actually blocks receptor sites for insulin. So this is what causes insulin receptors. BPA blocks it, causes insulin to go high, which then initiates your pancreas for you to make more insulin, goes higher and higher, and then what happens is you get more glucose in your blood because your body's homeostatic system isn't working correctly. So can you see that if you're exposed to toxins, or if you're exposed to heavy metals, or you're drinking BPA and you're having these weird kind of blood sugar issues, you're having fluctuating blood sugars, or you've got elevated testosterone, or you've got polycystic ovarian syndrome, hair growth, acne, high insulin, or crazy hormones due to insulin, but your diet is really good. Can you see how you can just go a little bit deeper here and see, okay, my external environment might be influencing my hormones more than I thought it would be. So this is really interesting. Another issue that happens with toxins is toxins cause inflammation. They cause more cytokines in the body. These are the peptides that initiate kind of this inflammation. And this is what drives metabolic disease. Metabolic disease like elevated, we've got blood pressure, heart disease, elevated cholesterol, elevated triglycerides, high blood pressure, diabetes, what else? Obesity. So all of these metabolic conditions are driven by inflammation, and these toxins cause these cytokines that cause this kind of low-lying inflammation. So that's another way that these toxins can cause issues with insulin and diabetes, because when you have any of these metabolic syndromes, you're more likely to have fatty tissue, and the more fatty adipose tissue you have, the more likely you are to be insulin resistant. So then you've got this kind of vicious cycle as well. I wanted to talk to you as well about how insulin affects your cortisol as well, and how cortisol affects your insulin. So cortisol is your stress hormone. It produced in your adrenals, cortisol along with adrenaline, both in your fight-flight. When you are exposed to toxins, heavy metals, external and endotoxins, so endotoxins could be what your body makes, it's either a toxic compound, or it could be for you if it's wheat, if you're celiac or something like that. When you're exposed to these toxins, your body tends to make more cortisol. So the cortisol comes higher and higher, and then what ends up happening when you've got high cortisol is that initiates more glucose from glycogen storage. So glucose is stored as glycogen in the body. When your cortisol is high, it goes and gets that glycogen from storage and turns it into glucose in your blood. This is why some people actually wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. with a start, suddenly wake up and can't get back to sleep, because of this blood glucose, this cortisol connection. That's particularly when your blood glucose actually drops too low, and your body then initiates the cortisol to go and get the blood glucose. But with this high elevated cortisol caused by your exposure to toxins, you get high blood sugar. So an example would be, you're walking in a shopping centre, you're going into Myer or you're going into David Jones, and you go through the perfume section and they're spraying all these things. Do you suddenly feel anxious? Do you feel funny? Does your body go into a funny state? Because what's essentially happening there is your body is going into fight-flight and is initiating cortisol. That exposure to the toxins, particularly if you're not used to it, is initiating cortisol. Or are you on the bus and suddenly you can get a smell of someone's perfume or something in the air, and it actually makes you a little bit agitated. So that would mean you're actually very in tune to what your cortisol levels are doing, and your body's going into fight-flight. Now, if you're not noticing that, it might just be that your body's in that underlying, and maybe you're also used to perfumes, you might be used to those smells. But for those of you that have tried to cut them out of your kind of lifestyle, you'll notice it, and you'll find it will put you on edge. And that's why, because those external smells, those toxins coming from perfumes or paint, it's actually initiating adrenaline, it's initiating cortisol, and that's going high in your body. That's initiating a sympathetic nervous system response, which is putting you in fight, flight, high alert. You're ready to run from the tiger, but really it's just the perfume in David Jones. So that's what's happening with cortisol and how that affects your blood sugar. So we know the higher cortisol gets, then that leads to higher blood sugar long term as well. They actually did a study in fish. And the study in fish was to do with copper. And what they noticed was when they gave the fish copper, that actually induced a stress response. It released the stress hormone cortisol. But here's what happened. The reason that it looks like the reason we have that stress response is that initial stress response to release cortisol is to actually block our absorption of the toxins. So one could say that if you're in adrenal fatigue, if your adrenals aren't working properly, the feedback mechanism's not working properly, if your cortisol is super, super low, chronic fatigue syndrome, hypopituitary function, really low cortisol, one could then hypothesize that you are more prone to absorbing toxins in the environment, whether that be from paint, from fumes, from your food, from pesticides, from herbicides. So if your cortisol is low due to some reason, due to illness, sickness, anything like that, you are more prone to absorbing those toxic chemicals. The reason being is studies show that when you're exposed to a toxin, your cortisol elevates. That protects you from the short term from absorbing that toxin. So that's really, really good. The problem then occurs is either if your cortisol is low, but also what these studies show after time, if your cortisol stays elevated, so your cortisol stays high, it doesn't come down, you don't allow your cortisol to come down from your stress response, you don't go into that parasympathetic nervous system, what ends up happening is these ion channels in your body change and you start absorbing more of the heavy metals and more of the toxins. So the protection mechanism that's there to protect you in the basic at the beginning, when you've got the exposure, does a 360 on you because you might have high cortisol all the time. So if you've got very high cortisol all the time, you're exposed to stresses all the time, or you're always in fight flight, or your sympathetic nervous system dominant, then again, you might be more prone to actually absorbing these heavy metals because your systems, the ion channels aren't working correctly. This also means your electrolytes will be out of balance, but that's for another Facebook Live. They've also shown in studies that cadmium does affect adrenal activity as well. So all of these small interactions that these toxins are having with your whole endocrine system, with your cortisol, with your pituitary and with your adrenals, we can see that it puts it out slightly. Okay, next, what did I want to talk about next? That was toxins of stress. Next, I wanted to talk about glycation. Glycation is a huge topic. There's so much to talk about, but I'm really going to just talk about some of the basic things when it comes to toxins. So glycation is a process that happens outside of your body and also inside of your body. So outside of your body, what can happen is meat that's overcooked, barbecued meat, burnt meat, deep fried chips in vegetable oil, hydrogenated fats. They cause what's called advanced glycation end products. Advanced glycation end products. AGES is the acronym, Advanced Glycation End Products. What these are, this is where a sugar molecule has essentially binded to an amino acid, a protein, and it's kind of gone solid and it starts causing damage in the body. So it happens in the connective tissue, it happens in the heart tissue, it happens all over the body. This is what actually promotes aging as well. And this is where a sugar kind of bonds and then it creates this really strange product. This can happen in things like meat, so it can happen in pasteurization can do this, smoking can do this, frying can do this, grilling can do this. So that's where meats actually have been shown, studies have shown that meat can say be a precursor to cancer, and one of the reasons is this process and not having enough antioxidants in your diet, and this is why antioxidants are so important. But what can actually happen is this can happen inside your body as well. And what has been shown is that sugar can cause this, so particularly fructose. Fructose is very prevalent of causing this. So if you have too much fructose, high fructose corn syrup, this can happen in your body, and this can cause aging, this can cause cancer, this can cause heart disease, and it's basically where the tissue, where the peptide gets kind of like solid, and it cannot be reversed. That's the problem here. It cannot be reversed. So you just want to prevent that from happening. But what studies are showing now is that it's not just high sugar consumption, it's not just having overcooked meat, it's actually toxins are causing this as well. So BPA, heavy metals, toxins in your environment, toxins in your beauty products, they're actually causing this glycation in your body, and this is causing more of these advanced glycation end products, which are causing lots of damage to your DNA and your tissue within your body. And they've actually done a lot of studies on toxins, but some of the most prevalent studies they've done are on cigarette smoking, showing that cigarette smoking is huge. And this is one of the reasons that you might find people that do smoke a lot of cigarettes, you know, they might age a little bit faster. We've got the cancers associated with cigarette smoking, heart disease smoking associated cigarette smoking, you know, the fine lines as well and the wrinkles on the face, so all of those. So we see now that toxins can also promote this aging and promote these products that are really not very healthy at all for our body. So it's more, it goes deeper than we think that it does, and these toxins that we're exposed to do have more effect than we realize. So I just wanted to touch on those topics because I think those ones are really important for you to know about. But before you start freaking out and panicking, we can mitigate this. We can mitigate all of this stuff that's happening in our environment. Of course, we can't run away and live in like a complete toxic-free bubble. And, you know, some are worse than others, some are better than others. Like I've mentioned with my teeth, you know, I want to have my teeth filled. I don't want to have like a rigid tooth. I want it to be filled. So I've chosen to have this. That's fine. Now that I've made the connection between the nickel and hyperinsulinemia, which is affecting my testosterone levels, I'm going to just do some research myself and just figure out what I need to do to mitigate this nickel and how I can work every day on actually removing this nickel from my body in a safe way, because it would have been stored in my body. My body would be storing the nickel. So that's something for me to work out. But you know, when you work on all this, it's not going to just affect your insulin, it's not going to improve your insulin levels, it's not going to just improve your blood sugar, it's also going to improve your overall health, it's going to improve your endocrine system, it's going to reduce your chances of cancer, it's going to reduce aging as well, all of these beautiful benefits for you. So just some things you can do, you know, in terms of these advanced glycation end products, which are called AGEs, AGES, which you can Google, you know, just reducing those in your environment and inside, in terms of in your food, you know, just make sure you're having more kind of steamed food, raw food, stewed food, lightly boiled, sauteed food. Try not to super overcook your food, you know, till it's crispy. Try not to burn your meat. And barbecues are fun, love barbecues, but try not to have barbecues every single day. And if you are having that kind of meat, you really need to make sure that you're having the rainbow color of salad and vegetables with that meat. You need to make sure you're compounding the effect of that meat and giving things that are actually going to be nutritious and actually going to kind of block the negative aspects of having the burnt meat or having the highly processed food. So it's important to do that as well. Now, spirulina has been shown to be wonderful also at reducing these negative impacts. So spirulina is something, yesterday I mentioned chlorophyll to help with detoxing the body, but also spirulina can be used. So what I tend to do is I buy the spirulina tablets, and I just have 6. I just take 6 in one go, 6 once a day, and that is fantastic at negating all these ages and all this inflammation going on from the toxins, and also the binding of the peptides to the sugar molecules and causing these kind of like rigid rods in your body. So it's a beautiful anti-aging, beautiful kind of anti-inflammatory thing to do, and it's also fantastic at, you know, trying to reduce your insulin levels, stable out your blood sugar levels, and support your cortisol levels. So spirulina is fantastic. Just making sure you're having enough polyphenols in your diet. I know I harp on about polyphenols, but polyphenols, you know, really super dark chocolate, green tea, raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, in fact, all of your berries, and also just regular black tea, as you know, 1 cup of those a day, really good quality coffee as well. All of these polyphenols not only feed good bacteria in your gut, but they also support this glycation and stop this glycation process from happening, and support and counteract that as well. And they're fantastic anti-aging products as well. Again, reduce your exposure. So simple things that you can do. Start with the things that you don't need. I wrote this in an email today. Start with the things that you don't need. You don't need the car deodorizer. You don't need those smelly sticks. So just start taking away things that you don't need, and just really simplify down your cleaning products, especially if you're using a spray every day, you know, to wipe down the kitchen bench top. Just swap that out first. Some things that you're smelling all the time, swap those out. Just keep the products that you really want, you really need to keep. Some people have, you know, their face care routine. Some people have a foundation that they like. Some people have their favorite perfume. But, you know, start just reducing things down. And as I mentioned yesterday, I put the link in the live yesterday. Alex Stewart Low Tox course is going live. So that's a wonderful course to actually use in conjunction to what I suggest in terms of internally detoxing. Just helps you with everything else that you need to be doing in terms of your home, your beauty products, your cleaning products, your car, that kind of thing. Just places that we don't realize it's coming from. One place I realized toxins was coming from, and I was ignorant, or was I ignoring it? Maybe I was ignorant. My coffee machine, I had an espresso coffee machine, and actually they're not all like this, but what I noticed was the bit where the hot water comes out was plastic, and the hot water was so hot when it's coming out of the spout that it was warming up the plastic quite a lot, and I just thought, that's just not good for me, so I actually had to stop using that. But just identifying a few areas that you can limit, things that you can swap out. Just start there, and please don't be overwhelmed, and please ask questions, because I don't want you to feel anxious about this. I want you to be able to just take positive steps for your health and your environment. And limit sugars. You know, when it comes to these ages, when it comes to the glycation, it needs sugar. It needs a lot of sugar as well. So making sure that you're not having tons and tons of fructose, which is in, you know, you're not having lots and lots of agave. You're not having lots of soda drinks. You're just having, you know, your normal amount, a few pieces of fruit a day. You're not going crazy on fruits and eating them all the time. And then, of course, no added sugars to your food. Which is, we don't really need it. We get used to it after a while, and so just start phasing that out. And for those of you that are actually on metformin, one thing I didn't know this, and I only found this out when I was just doing some notes for this. Metformin actually prevents glycation, so essentially metformin can prevent aging and the diseases associated with glycation. So for those of you that are on metformin, there's a benefit for you. So there we go. So I hope you found that helpful. I hope it wasn't too complicated. I tried to make it as simple as possible because I think it's an important topic, but it's also one I want you to feel you can do something about. I really don't want you to feel anxious or overwhelmed. So please ask questions below, and if there's anything you don't understand, please let me know. So thank you so much for joining. Hey Joan, thanks so much for joining me live. I really appreciate you being here. And tomorrow I'm going to be coming on, I'm going to be talking about polycystic ovarian syndrome and that's relationship to toxins, and so that's going to be an interesting one. So until then, enjoy this hot day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.